to order. Okay. Shall we, we'll take attendance. So Marta?
Here.
Here. Emily?
Here.
Paul?
I'm here.
Brad's here, so that gives us a quorum. So we're good to get started. Let's go ahead and stand for the invocation and then the pledges. Anybody like to volunteer on the invocation? Okay, be happy to. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the gift of life you give us. We thank you for the country we live in and the community we live in. We thank you for the freedom to represent our community in service to this mud district. We pray that you guide the meeting tonight. All of it's done, be done in an orderly fashion and a fashion that would bring honor to you. We pray these things in Christ's name. Amen. Okay. Like to pledge to the U.S. flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For us non-Texans.
Thank you.
To the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. We have any comments from the public? No? Okay. So item 4, I assume no requests for adjustments either?
I don't have any.
Okay. Onto the consent agenda, pages 1 through 4. You guys have a look at that. Have any comments or questions for anybody? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moves.
Okay. We have a vote. All in favor of approving the consent agenda? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So I think that takes us down now, item 9, which is the appointment of a new director. So I want to hand this over to you, Brian.
Sir, so we do have the documents to be able to seat you as a new director. We do need to perform an oath, and then we will go through the action items to consider.
The notary is.
Henry, I'm gonna read off the oath here.
All right.
What?
Been okay? That was 104 in that driveway. That's just on that phone.
All right, please stand and raise your right hand. You, Jack Munich, solemnly swear or affirm that you will faithfully execute the duties of the office of Director of Montgomery County MUD number 7 for the state of Texas, and to the best of your ability, preserve, protect, and defend the laws and Constitution of the United States and this state, so help you God. Congratulations.
Thank you. Can I sign these while I sit here and then have them notarized? We're okay with that?
Well, as long as she can.
She can see me.
Welcome, Jack.
Right.
All right, so moving on to the action items. Item 9A is to accept Jack's qualification statement, bond, oath of office, affidavit of current director, and election not to disclose certain personal confidential information. Item B is to consider the election of officers. So let's first go through and take action on A, and then we can consider action on B through F. Motion to seat Jack and accept his qualification documents under 9A.
I'll motion to accept Jack, this qualification statement and bond, oath of office, affidavit of current director and elections under 9A.
Very good.
And I second.
All right, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Congratulations, Jack. Your seat is now live. Participate in the rest of the meeting.
Really?
They say, may you serve an interesting time.
All right, so next item B, election of officers. So we do have a vacancy for Assistant Secretary Treasurer. We do recommend that boards have two of those just to make sure we've always got someone to sign for secretary in case the primary secretary and the assistant are absent from a meeting. Jack, are you willing to serve as an assistant secretary in a backup role?
I am. Any motion?
I motion that he be accepted as the Assistant Secretary Treasurer.
Have a vote, please. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, and C is to approve the amended district registration form. That's the, actually C and D we can take together. So C is the amended district registration form that's filed with the TCEQ. It has factual information about the district, including who the directors are, what their terms of office. So we have to add Jack to that. And then D is the local government officers list. So that's the list that's made available to vendors to be able to determine if they have any potential conflicts with the district, and includes the list of all the directors. So we have to add Jack to that list as well. I get a motion on C and D to add Jack to the registration form and to the local government officers list.
Motion. I can motion to amend the district registration form relative to having Jack on the information, as well as authorizing preparation and maintenance of the local government officers list in connection with conflict of interest disclosure requirements.
Next second.
No.
We have a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Right, and then E and F are just informational. There's not action to be taken. Jack, under E, there's a memo in your packet there about requirements to watch two online training courses through the AG's website. One is for the Texas Public Information Act. That basically goes into more detail about the fact that all of our documents generally are public and have to be produced if a member of the public requests it. There are limited exceptions. So there's a 1-hour video on that. There's a separate 1-hour video on the Texas Open Meetings Act. That means that open to the public. We have to post an agenda with 72 hours before a meeting is held. We'll answer a lot of questions you may have about why we conduct meetings the way we do, and that's to make sure we comply with those legal requirements. So the memo will have a link to the website on the AG's page where you can watch both of those videos. Once you watch them, if you will print a copy of each of the certifications of completion and give that to Shelley, you're supposed to do that within 90 days of being seated as a director. 90. Most of the time it's done, and that's in your packet there. Most of the time directors do it in a month while it's fresh on your mind, and also to kind of educate you on how the meetings are handled. But just make sure you get that done as quick as you can and get it to Shelley. And then F, conflicts disclosure statement reporting requirement. So there's another memo in there that talks about conflicts and check the box yes or no items. Usually 9 out of 10 times directors don't have any conflicts. If you think you might, give me a call, I'll give you a card and we can visit by offline.
Okay.
All right, that will take us through item 9. Brad, back over to you.
Okay. Item 10 is review the district's draft proposal for our budget for fiscal 24-25.
All right.
Eric and Maureen.
Yes, you have in front of you 2 documents. One is the actual budget spreadsheet, and then a draft memo that kind of covers some items within that, the prose version. To give you,
It's
Says-
up there.
I
Oh, it's about it. Okay,
memorized it.
I did.
is that sevens? Just checking.
Yeah.
Okay,
Believe me, I
we've
did.
gone through a few.
The-
Just to kind of give you
You probably got this.
the background, today is just a presentation of the proposed budget. There's no vote to be taken today. You'll vote on the budget next month. The budget does include the recommendation of, for the next budget, agenda item, which is tax rate setting. So if you'll see at the top of the box, the yellow portion of the box, that includes the tax rate recommendation that you'll hear here in a minute, because that goes into this budget. So the importance of that is that helps build some of the revenue. The water and sewer rates this year on the tax, the water sewer rates this year on the retail side are not proposed to be changing. We changed them last year for the first time. It had been a while, and so we're not changing them this year. We did that rate analysis last year. This on the revenue, the front on the revenue side, this does include the SRA wholesale rates. Water rate did go down. The sewer rate stayed the same. And if you recall, the GRP rate went down. So all of this on the front shows all of that. It's really about it on the front. On the back, usually the stuff you really want to hear is the stuff in the orange and tan box. So I wanted to point out a couple items that are, I'll say outliers or differences from last year. One thing to note is on the water service and maintenance item, that's 5300.06. You can see last year's budget was 2,000, and this year's proposed at 80,000. What that includes is a change out of your commercial, larger diameter commercial meters. So as you'll recall, a couple years ago, all the MUDs converted their old mechanical meters to ultrasonic meters. At that time, the decision was made to not address the large diameter meters for two reasons. One, for cost reasons, but two, also because the larger diameter meters were actually not available. They're now manufacturing them regularly, and they're doing away with some of the old compound meters. So the parts that we need to fix those old meters is becoming more and more obsolete. So in MUD 7, you have 10 meters that are classified as large diameter meters. And in your case, they're all 3 and 4 inch meters. And so this proposal would be to change out the 10, 3 and 4 inch meters that you've got in the district. And that will allow your system, at least on that part, to be a whole as it pertains to all being AMI ultrasonic meters, which are more accurate. So that'll put you in pretty good position. Not a whole lot. Point out on 5300.09, as you can see, budget is the same as last year, but we did not spend all of last year, and that's a rollover. There was, last year it was anticipated that we would do, if you recall, a couple years ago, there was sanitary sewer evaluation that looked at the systems. And then out of that evaluation, there was recommendations to address the line work and manholes that needed rehab on basically a 3-phase or 3-year schedule. And so this year we just completed phase 1, and then last year's budget included phase 1 and phase 2. Most of your stuff was in phase 2 to begin with. We were anticipating last year that we could do phase 1 and hopefully get into phase 2. We didn't get very far into phase 2 because that's awaiting approvals on that particular, on phase 2. So we've put phase 2 and phase 3 into this budget. So it's just passing through the same, essentially the same project that didn't get done last year. We believe that phase 2 will get done this year. And then the next item down that's of significance is 5314. And that is, there's about $25,000 added to this one for one ditch piping rehabilitation. So we're going through an audit across the entire Woodlands of all of the ditches and the piping going into the ditches. So We have had a number of pretty significant catastrophic failures in the last year or so in a number of different districts where this old CM pipe, it's called CMP pipe, corrugated metal pipe, deteriorates. Usually in 20 to 30 years, it disintegrates essentially. And that's the pipe that's coming right into all the ditches. And so we're auditing it to identify what the overall asset class or list is, and we'll develop a capital improvement plan from that audit. Once we have all the data, we're going to be putting that into our JIS system as well, once we capture the data and the audit. In the meantime, I've budgeted at least one major repair on that in case it happens of $25,000. So that's where you see the difference there. Everything else pretty constant, no major issues. The other thing that we do look at, that you should look at, is the green line at the very bottom. It's something that we look at very closely. Recommendation, particularly in your case and the other MUDs, is that we'd like to get most of the districts up to 12, if not 16 months of reserves, particularly with all the infrastructure and aging infrastructure that's coming down the pipe, to put you in a position where you have some options when those things come. So you don't have to go out for bonds if you even can. I don't remember if they have any bond authorization, but right now, this budget with all those additional expenses put in play would basically kind of hold you constant at about 7 months of reserve. So it doesn't necessarily grow it, but these are also the types of projects that you would want to reserve for. So if you're able to do a few of these projects and keep that reserve constant, it's not ideal. You want to go up, but if you're at least getting those projects done, that's a good position to be in. So
Can you tell me how that's calculated? I mean, I don't want to be
Reserve.
specific. Yeah, I mean, what's
it's
this?
just the reserve of the budget. Months available of reserve of the annual budget.
Okay.
So you have 7 months of reserve. And we'd like that to be 12 to 16 months.
Okay, the annual budget is the other page. The annual budget is what, 5.327? Is that it? 5.3?
Yes.
Okay.
So our reserve,
So the monthly 12 divided into that number, then gives you a number that you calculate how many months it'll last. Okay, got it.
so all of this is our cash reserves, the investment pools, ending bank, and total cash available.
Correct.
Add that all up, that's our.
Eric, we do not have remaining bond authorization if usable.
So something goes bump in the night, you've got some cash here, something big goes on. One of the things that I'm a little concerned with across several of MUDs is once we get the audit done of the ditches and the piping, we'll know better what the magnitude of that is or isn't. And so there would be, once we know that, we can give recommendation on how to address it. So one way to address it would be to do as many as you can all at once. So you're going to get more bang for your buck as far as, per fix. If you do them one at a time, that's going to be very expensive because you're going to pay a premium on that. The other way to do it would be to budget a few a year with the idea of maybe rolling over a full replace as necessary in 5 to 7 years, something like that. But that's just something that we'll have to look at once we have the audit and the CIP done. If you're not in a good cash position, that's going to limit your opportunities to do whatever on whatever time frame. So because we don't have the ability to go off the bonds anymore, and you don't have the ability to raise any additional capital, the only way that you would be able to raise any funds at this point is to raise your water rates, water and sewer rates.
How does,
Do that by a certain percentage.
No,
You can do it as high as you want.
Okay.
so the tax rate
It's
is
a tax rate.
Tax rates limited, yeah,
Okay.
right. Yeah, so we can't do that. And the tax rate recommendation that you're about to hear basically has in it the max that we possibly could at 3.5%. I can't go any more than that. So it's a tax rate reduction, but a tax rate increase, not our tax
Income.
revenue increase of 3.5%. Yeah, that maxes out your ability to at least get some reserve.
How does our reserve compare to the other months?
Average to below average.
So can you provide, well,
There's some in the threes, which are, you don't want to be. And then there's several that are in the 7, 8s. And then we have 11, 16. We've got several that are, they started in a different position anyway, but they're a little bit better shape. This isn't bad.
right, yeah, I
Let's
think
say
you need to be
you guys
careful.
thought-
We're certainly better than 3, but and you've got a decent reserve in terms of overall dollar amount, 2.5 million, that's good. But a project like I'm talking about could be 4 million in itself.
That's a 5-year project.
Could be, it depends on how we get it done.
So-
Depends on what makes sense.
So just to clarify, I mean, you've got 8.2 over on the bottom, right? But really, your ending year is 7.1.
Choose the average.
Yeah, which is not where you're ending up the year. Okay, so this budget is a budget that results in a 7.1 at the end of the budget year,
Correct,
not the 8.2. Okay,
correct, 7-1.
so I think people need to understand that is, we're not looking at 8.2 to end up, we're looking at 7.1 to end up.
Where do you?
At the bottom.
It's at the
It's
average.
the average.
I think it's the average.
It's font. I had to make it visible. so
I got
could
you.
do it.
It's not on mine.
Green
Yeah.
page.
Okay, so
Yeah, that's the average. The number you should look at is the September.
7.1, yeah. Can you give us as a follow-up, give us like a 5-year history where we've ended up the last 5 years?
But a couple of questions of what Eric had to say.
Okay, sure. Yeah, no, yeah, I mean, I thought we were looking for a target of around 12, so the 12 to 16 seems new to me. Paul, I don't know whether you remember.
Not exactly, no.
AWD recommends 16 to 24. You don't have the mechanical facilities.
Yeah.
So I think you can look at something less than 24 for sure.
Yeah.
But I think if we're in that 12 to 16 range, I think you'd be in good shape. Again, that's also going to depend on what the CIP looks like. So, you've seen Esther A's CIP on various things, but you have your own. So you've got smaller diameter water lines, sewer lines, and then the ditches and piping that I just mentioned. So we're putting together an overall capital improvement plan for all of that. I think water's further out. You're addressing sanitary right now. I think the next one that we tackle is not water, but the storm that I just mentioned.
So if you could give us some 5-year history on the ending,
Where we've been.
and then give us a table of current, where are we relative to the other months? The table.
I can't recall exactly, but did we not discuss when we talked last time, 2 years ago, discuss the amount that we were trying to gather for emergency back funds? We were concerned more about tax rate or something.
Well,
We want to
so,
raise the tax rate.
yeah, the tax rate impact came about a few years back.
Right.
The districts are run together now. But I know with all my districts, we had conversations, Woodlands and elsewhere, before that new requirement went into place and you were still subject to the 8%, making all districts aware, this is your last bite at the apple. If you want to, reset your maintenance tax at a higher level for the future 3.5% calculations, this is your last chance to do that. So we had that discussion. Now, y'all also paid off your debt recently, which gave you more flexibility. And I know that the board was interested in pushing the tax rate down aggressively, which is fine. And so here, I mean, you're in good shape. And as Eric mentioned, your big expense that's driving you deficit is that large ditch repair of 750,000. So you would have a surplus this year were it not for that. And you can see that on your projected actuals to your budget for 23-24, because that expense was deferred from this fiscal year to next. So you were budgeted to have a negative 174 and you've actually got a positive $1 million. So you're in strong shape. You've got a large expense at your cash flow, which is great that you can do that. This is just a conservative budget to be able to try to capture that 3.5%, since 3.5% of such a low starting tax rate, which the Woodlands is very fortunate to be able to have such low tax rates, but it makes it difficult to squirrel away reserve increases when you're doing 3.5 of such a small number.
I did want to point out, and Brad is on the audit committee for the trustees, and he had asked, and Brad, it's in the packet. I don't know if you saw it. But Brad had asked for pictures
Yeah.
of what were we talking about this ditch piping. So on page 73 and forward, I included some examples of what exactly we're talking about, just so you can get some perspective. I appreciate that request.
Yeah, thanks for sticking in.
Usually associated with a large hole somewhere in there.
It's a.
There is a hole there. Did you see that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's usually one of the first signs.
So unfortunately, some of these, when they happen, and two of them last year happened on property lines or, a lot of times the pipe's going between the lots or it's along the back of the lot of a house. And when that happens and you get one of these holes, pulls the fence down and, you've got animals perhaps, or whatever the case may be. So it gets more expensive if you don't catch them. So what we'd like to do is get a little bit out in front of them because these things get a lot more expensive when they look like some of these. And sometimes you can't see it. It just happens boom, one day and it's been going on for a while and the grass just hasn't let go. And then it lets go and you're there. So
And how many of these do we have in the?
that's what we're doing right now is trying
No
to.
idea.
Assessment.
So I wrote some notes when you were talking, Eric, so I'm just gonna repeat some of the terms and then
Okay.
just to kind of go back to this. You mentioned you're concerned about some catastrophic failures. How many have been reported?
We had 4 or 5 last year and this year
Do we?
over the last 12 months.
And did those get serviced or we still have those open to be fixed?
Well, they cost anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000.
Each one. So then when we talk about this one that's in the budget for this year to fix one,
Correct.
how many are open right now? You don't, I mean, there's nothing else that's glaring, but you see something that is looking like it needs to be fixed.
No, what I know is that when this starts happening, it doesn't choose where it happens, meaning that the parameters that are causing these deteriorations throughout the woodlands is the same, whether it's District 7 or District 1, it doesn't matter. So my prediction is we're going to find more. And so I've asked our ditch maintenance contractor to go in and do an audit with this next mowing. So they're going to be going in, we mow in, I think, April, June, August, and November. And so they're going to be mowing this month. And we're asking them to go in and do an evaluation as they go through the mowing. Once they knock it down, knock the grass down, to go in and do an audit of where are they, what are they, and are they looking? Some have been replaced. So some of the CMP are now, we replace it with what's called HDPE. So we replace it with a high density ethylene plastic pipe when we replace them. So some over the years have been replaced. So I also want to get an accounting of what we've already fixed. And then I'm going to be putting all of that data into our GIS database software so that we can track that going forward. And now we'll have a good sound database. We'll know what's been fixed, what hasn't been fixed. And so again, once we identify the magnitude, we'll be able to better know whether I have 2 immediate ones for next budget, or I've got 6, or we got to do a project, whatever that looks like. We'll bring that back to you.
And it sounded like this could be the next 3 months that they're going to be checking everything when they're mowing.
I'm hopeful that yes, in the next.
Do you have a target once they get the information back of when you want to have all that data to share with us? I know that we're trying to work on a budget
It'll be by
here,
the end of the year would be my estimation.
just with the rains. And I think we've all seen that one big bridge that kind of everything dropped after that last big rain. I don't know what highway that was. It was a bridge area.
7.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So say 10 something. That I'm concerned of something happening like that. There was a huge 11-inch rain up in like the northeast, and like the whole front of properties and streets were falling down. So, this is a concern. So I appreciate you taking a look at this, and I'm curious to see what we're doing. And I think that there's got to be some additional support on financials to cover it. I think it's eminent. Even 30-year piping repair collapsing. I've got it in my yard. We dug up with everything. It's collapsing. So
It's there.
yeah, it's there. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm finished.
Good. Okay.
So the only way we can raise this money is by raising rates, is what you're saying, correct?
Well, one step is what you're about to talk about, which is basically maxed out at 3.5%. And then the other one would be to raise water and sewer rates, retail ratings.
Or are you asking about increasing or decreasing the deficit that's projected for this year? How would you do
How
that?
to build the reserves
It's
is
further than where it is projected this year. So next year, if you don't have, we will see what the CIP says, but you know you're gonna have 750 coming off. That's a one-time deal. Now, maybe half that gets gobbled up with some expense, but even if it does, that's what, 375,000. Take that out of your 140. So you got around a 200,000 surplus next year if you get your
The other way.
rate next year to be able to build your reserve further. Just taking that one expense off the budget.
Yeah, for background, maybe it wasn't clear. We have a major repair going on that's about a $750,000 repair, which is really hurting our budget this year. That's a one-time event. Okay, so we think we pay for that this year. It's, I mean, in the 2025 budget, it's in here. For the 2026 budget, that won't be in there. We keep the income the same, decrease our expenses, and we'll build our reserves in 2026.
but we won't be at 4 million, which is the recommended, correct?
No, 4 million. It's not, it's a month, it's per month. It's not a dollar
It's a
amount.
rule of thumb. Yeah, I mean, it's all relative to each month's budget. So, you know,
So we,
well, for instance, if you've got, 12-month budget and 12 months reserve of a $2 million budget or whatever, that may not be enough to cover a particular district's expenses, or bumps in the night. So it just kind of depends. You're at 2.5 million. That's not bad.
Or I think what you're saying is kind of eyeballing 7.1 months to get to 12 months,
Yeah.
you're probably talking 2.5 to
Yeah.
around 4. That's not going to happen in 1 year. I mean,
No.
that would be very painful for your customers to have to, deal with the higher water and sewer rates that would have to be imposed to generate that in 1 year. So hopefully we'll be able to maintain the system as things come up and slowly build that reserve up.
I mean, the constant tension we have as representatives is how do we balance building a reserve without squirreling away too much money that people say, well, you charge me all this money, but you're not spending it. You don't really need it. Stop raising my rates. Okay, I mean, that's the conflict we have, right? I mean,
Throw in the conflict of not having any reserves and having the bumps more than we expect, or not having enough to cover those bumps.
Yeah.
Where are you gonna get the money?
Yeah.
Same people.
yeah. So I mean, so I think
You gotta.
2.5 million,
Getting
7
5
months
years
is,
Previous.
Yeah.
That'll work.
and I think,
Just show us what we've done.
Have you seen this number higher, Paul?
I haven't. I mean, I just know I said that my remembrance was discussing it when we were talking about rate structures. And that was a different story.
Yeah, and we were also talking some back then about when the debt service was coming off, how would that be handled? And I was just looking back on one of the old audits. So that's what you get the faster time goes. That was actually back in 2017 to 2018 according to the audit. That's the fiscal year when we were at 16.45 cents that had 3.5 cents of debt service and 12.95 of M&O. In the following year, the board went to a 12.5 cent total. So gave all the 3.5 cent of debt service back to the taxpayers and went down a little bit more. So that was an inflection point.
it was 2017.
Fiscal year 2017 to 2018.
Watch that year as well.
Yeah.
So I encourage you guys to continue. If you got any questions, send them to Merrick,
Great question.
and we'll vote is next month. Okay. And really, so much of this revenue is driven by what the River Authority does on their wholesale rates, and then we add to that to get our retail rates. So,
Right.
you know, we got a nice bonus this year with
Yeah,
wholesale rates going down,
That helped.
right? That helped us. Okay. So Ed, good job. Chris, good job.
His guys,
Do it again next year.
it's the goal.
Yeah, if you think of anything between now and next month, give me a ring and I'll be happy to help.
So the goal is next month, pretty much just come in, review, no changes,
That's right.
and then we'll vote. Okay. And the other thing that, if you know, you may not notice, the percent numbers are comparing budget to budget, not budget to projection. Okay. So you'll see some where the projections significantly different than the budget, as Eric has explained on a couple items.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so anyway, that's a difference you can tell. Okay. Great discussion. And, I did have one question, and I encourage you guys, if you haven't read the memo, read the memo. There's a lot of good stuff in here. First page, next to last paragraph, talks about significant expenses in the district that may need to plan for a year. Were there any significant expenses that we haven't talked about that either? Okay, because it's talked about Howard Hughes input, and I didn't hear anything from them that was, okay. This is just kind of like annual boilerplate, but, okay. So we'll make sure we weren't missing something.
Nothing anticipated.
So you make a decision next month, but let's say in 3 months, you have a good idea about this capital improvement plan. Where do you put
I
that?
mean, a district can always amend their budget, but I don't know that we would do that. I think what we would probably do is look at the findings, and then we would probably have a discussion about, you know, what we might do in the next budget year. I mean, obviously, if we've identified that there's some immediate about to be sinkholes, that's a different discussion that we probably need to say, we got to go do right now, because we're not going to wait on that. And by the way, you had asked, are there any open ones across? As soon as we find something like that, we're not waiting. Unless a district says, I have no money, which maybe that could happen, but in a couple, but we've got to do those. I mean, we have an obligation for the safety of the community to address those. So that wouldn't even be a thing that we would be waiting on, you know, working on anything. So when that comes, we'll have to look at it and see what it tells us. And that's probably going to be what drives the next discussion. But I wouldn't anticipate that we would sit there and amend the budget to address whatever the CIP comes. It'll definitely give us some insight into maybe how we think about budgeting the following year for sure. But that'd be my recommendation. And, you know, if there's, like I said, if there's an ugly one or mini or whatever, that's a serious talk we'll need to have it at.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on and have the tax discussion.
And going with Barrett, on page 16, you should have a letter that looks like this, followed by a table. And from the newer directors, the tax rate setting process is a two-step process. So all you're doing today is authorizing publication of the total tax rate. Next month, you'll hold a public hearing and then you'll adopt and levy that tax rate, keeping in mind that you want to publish the highest rate you'll consider, because you can always come down from it next month. You just can't go up without republishing. So all that being said, if you look at the memo, currently, as of January 1 of 2024, your certified value is 1.17 billion. And there's another 39 million, that is remaining uncertified. So you're at about 1.2 billion. That's a 9.47% increase over last year's 1.1 billion. If you flip to the second page, this will have majority of the information I'm sure you're interested in. In the top box, with respect to your maintenance and operating tax rate, last year you levied 11.53 cents, which generated about 1.25 million. we're proposing 11.08 cents this year, which would generate 1.3 million. Parity rate from last year, if you wanted to raise the same amount of revenue you did last year, you would need 10.53 cents. And then currently to balance your budget, your existing or your proposed budget, 12.5 cents. And then the bottom of that box, the value of a penny in your district is just under $119,000. The middle box with respect to the tax bill, last year's average homestead value, $336,740, which means the average tax bill was $388. This year, it went up to $362,680, meaning based on the proposed 11.08 tax rate, you would have a $402 tax bill, so a $14 increase year over year, or 3.5%. So the average homestead went up 7.7%. And so the tax bill is at 3.5% because, as Brian mentioned, back in 2019, Senate Bill 2 was approved. And since you are designated as a developed district, if your average tax bill goes up more than 3.5%, then you would be in a mandatory rollback election scenario. So you'd have to go to the voters to go above that, or it would be rolled back to the rollback rate. So if you look at the bottom box, the proposed rate of 11.0802 is the proposed rate. Parity rate, 10.5 cents, as I previously mentioned. And then the total rate to avoid a rollback election, 11.0802. And then all the way at the bottom, the rollback rate would be 11.0802. So you're at 3.5%. I'll pause there. I'm happy to answer any questions.
As I mentioned a minute ago, that's the number that was put into the budget, that proposal.
Which number?
The
11.0802.
802 rather.
Lots of decimal places.
Yeah.
The rollback rate ends up being the maximum rate we can increase it by without going out to the voters.
Anything above 3.5% would require an election.
Rollback rate just ends up
Yes.
being what you recommended.
Yes.
Well, yeah, in discussing with staff, because you're still showing a deficit, they wanted to push for the 3.5%.
I mean, our rollback rate is automatically calculated. There's an automatic calculation or?
Yeah, it's the tax bill, 3.5%
Okay.
on the tax bill increase year over year.
So if we wanted to go up 4%, we'd have to go for election. If we go for election, if we pass election, we get 4%. If we don't pass election, it rolls back to the 3.5%, which is what we're proposing, or they're proposing.
Right.
Okay.
And we get to pay for the election that went bad.
Right.
Yeah, so your rate's able to go down because your, the appraisals went up, what was it, 7%?
7.7.
7.7, there you go. So you capture some of it and drop the rest out of the rate.
But I guess my feeling is based upon a short 2-year history in Falk and had a lot more. This looks like a reasonable thing to do. I mean, I think going to a election is not necessary. I think we've got, if we were at 2 months reserve, we'd have a case to go out to the public and say, hey, listen, we don't have enough reserves. We're at risk of having if we had a major expense, we wouldn't be able to pay our bills. At 7 months reserve of over $2.5 million, I think we'd be challenged to go forward and say to our neighbors, please give us more money so we can have more in our bank account.
Right.
This is an educational question only. When would that election occur?
November.
Would be a November
Yeah.
ballot.
So any districts that we're not recommending and don't anticipate any rollback elections now, because the schedule for when you have to call the election and hold it is really not very functional. We've talked to the legislature about that, because you actually have to call the elections in August. So we would, for districts, we've talked about if we want to do a rollback election in the future to maybe pay for some of the river authority infrastructure. No, there's a lot of stuff to analyze and all that. But if we ever get to that point, then we would actually be moving up this meeting to an earlier time to make sure that we can call the election. We would actually have an item on the August agenda to call the election, because the November election, the deadline to call is mid-August. I can't remember exactly what the day is this time, but it's right around now if it hadn't already passed.
I'm not proposing.
Yeah, but it's good.
No.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, because it's a mess, frankly, and when a district is serious about possibly doing a rollback election, we have to know way far in advance to make sure we don't miss deadlines to call the election, because it does need to be in November. Good question.
I support what Brad says. I think, go ahead, excuse me, with what we got, what the recommendation is.
So I guess we need a motion to publish. So as Adam mentioned, this actually goes in a public release, and we would go with 110802. And then if something happened that changed dramatically, we could come back next month and lower it, but we cannot go higher than what we publish.
Make a motion to publish that rate.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Good night. We'll see you next month.
Yep.
Okay, Chris, I guess.
All
Operating
right.
update.
Yes, sir. So our report begins on page 18 in your packet. Don't really have anything to add, but I'm going to just kind of walk through it, just to put some flavor to it, if you will. So 18, 19, water, wastewater stuff. Blend's still going good. We are still shooting for 50-50 on the water side. Page 20 is just some of the out of service items, as well as some of the wastewater data. But on page 22 starts our projects. I did want to bring to your attention that, as well as previous page of 21, our financial system is still acting up. And so our accounting and IT department is actively working with the vendor to get it corrected. And so we went live on the new software May 1st. We can pay bills, but we cannot get accurate reports that we trust from the system, because we have to take part of our old system plus a new system, join them together for the fiscal year. So they're actively working on it. So all that to be said, when you're looking at the project pages, starting on page 22, the invoice to date column is as of April 30th, with the exception of the one project on page 26. That's highlighted in yellow. That one project is closed out. So we did talk to accounting to see, okay, can you update these manually, and how long would it take to get these financials, to see if we could get everything done. This item took a little bit of time, a few hours to put together. When it went to the trustees, it was incorrect. In fact, this number is now correct that you see here. So just FYI, you will see as you move forward through the report, when you get to the GRP report on page 30, the financials are usually on the first page here. There's some financials here as well as the document. We also do not have financials in this document as well. So it's not just the Woodlands Division, it's literally the entire River Authority, every division, every department, as well as our board. So it is actively being investigated. The GRP report that begins on page 30 and runs for a few pages. Y'all have asked for this, or MUDs collectively have asked for it. We've had a few changes on pages 31, 32, adding in some of the percentages and additional water usage there, just to kind of help people take a look at that. So nothing out of the ordinary, just kind of walking through it a little bit, because I know it's a lot of data. Page 35 is the AC Waterline project update that y'all asked for last month. We will have a one-pager every month presented in here. Basically, what you're going to see on the AC Waterlines is there's been a lot of front-end work. Next week, actually on Monday, begins the non-destructive testing. And so we'll be doing that for a period of time. From that non-destructive testing, we'll determine what destructive testing to do from there, and then carry forward.
Now, page 35, draft findings were submitted on the 7th. You go bring those, to provide a summary of those.
I have not seen draft anything turned in. I know we had a call about them, but nothing paper has been turned in.
So this was a aspirational and didn't happen.
Well, it was presented. I'm not sure if that's what they meant by turned in.
Was that submitted?
I'll check with tech services to see if they've gotten something paper. I know the original intent was to hold on to data since it was preliminary, because the original results were any water leak we had for the past 12 months, we've retained the pipe, and that's what the testing they did on. So, yeah, if they did submit something, it did not come across my desk to turn into y'all, but let me check and I'll get.
Definitely like to see what their findings were.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Understood.
just another, not too much history, but if you go back to page 19, you can see the impact of weather. If you look at July, prior 2 years were very dry, tremendous use in water. August was very dry last year, and you look at what happened this July where the rate came.
We still have a little time to catch up, though.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
because last year was what, 10 or 12 days at 100 degrees and more.
Well, it didn't rain, Jim.
Plus no rain.
45 days.
It rained in mid-September.
We've been lucky this year.
It's been a really wet summer this year.
Yeah, so maybe. Yeah.
I
Amazing.
just finally started to turn the sprinkler out there. So it's been so rainy.
I think that speaks to conservation, though. There's not that many years ago, it didn't matter whether it rained or not. They still used the same amount of water because they sprinkle in the rain. So
There's,
come a long way in teaching people not to do it once.
well, there's an interesting data point. Share that with them when we get there on what the last month's usage was compared to normal usage. It's pretty shocking.
Well, I know I looked at my smart meter thing and read that. So that like way lower usage.
Yeah, we've got some pretty cool data points. I think it.
68, I think 66% lower than last year at this time. That was fine. My notes.
That's pretty close.
Yeah.
Two final things in the report.
Sure, go ahead.
Page 37 is the land acquisition process update that's included in here. The financials at the bottom right are out of date. We have an update as of 8/7 that has been provided to Shelley and Eric. So if you'd like to see that, they can get that to you. The biggest change, of course, besides the numbers themselves, at 6.85% is just under 9% at 8.98%. So it's just slightly higher. Last thing I have begins on page 39.
Can you talk about activities? I mean, are we,
Right now, we're still doing, I think surveys are complete at this point. We're doing most of the environmental and still trying to get a right of entry. We have not started appraisals. And actually, I think it's next week, we'll actually talk to one homeowner about a purchase. So we're moving along slowly, but we are starting the process to actually engage. So
do we have a timeline on spending? No.
I don't think we do. Last time we did land acquisition, it took 2 years to get all the properties. So
The numbers on that picture represent.
on the top pictures, those little octagon looking numbers,
Yeah.
those are the different parcels. And so we've broken up the parcels into say, based on MCAD. And so each one of those numbers is just listing and it corresponds to a spreadsheet that we have that lists the owner and whatever we are stage in the process.
Tracks in green will be the last ones that we consider acquiring that are on the far left. 13 through 16.
Floodplain.
They're deep in the floodplain. Very little development, but floodplain property has gotten very expensive. So
Does this represent the whole county or what does this map represent?
Just the,
Just the area. Pardon? Just the area, but that's the wastewater treatment plant. So it's just
Okay.
the area immediately
Around it? Thank you.
Contact says sawdust. It's the road.
Yep, okay, yeah.
Sawdust in the front and golden through the middle of it.
Any questions or comments from Chris? Okay. Take us to 44. Is that where we're going?
Certainly, I'll let you know what was provided unless,
Yeah, that was an action item that
Oh.
you had asked for
Yeah,
last.
yeah,
time.
okay.
You, the information that, my 36 director asked for.
Yeah. Before we get to that, you want to comment on the aquifer level graphs?
certainly. So on page 39 in your packet, we do this twice a year. This is actually from the spring. So this was collected in, I want to say March or so. You'll see another one coming out October, November timeframe. All this is showing you is the aquifer levels for the graph, for the aquifers, water levels in the aquifers, both Evangeline and Jasper. You're gonna have one graph, like on page 40, that runs from 1990 to 2024. Then we've got a zoomed in version from 2010 to 2024. So obviously from the 90s forward, you're adding more wells, so you can see some of kind of start halfway in between. We did the zoomed in version because right around 2016 is when you'll start seeing the surface water come in, so you can see some adjustments on the aquifer there. So 40 and 41, same information, just zoomed in for the Evangeline aquifer. Pages 42 and 43 are the Jasper aquifer, which is the deeper aquifer, and we actually use 85% of our water from those aquifers, from that aquifer. That's it, unless you have any questions.
Yes, commentary?
I guess it just, when I looked at it, it seems that
There's plenty of potential.
Yeah, it's I have
Seems
another
related.
draft. Go ahead.
I mean, I was just gonna say that if you look at the demand, obviously the higher demand over here on the left,
Yeah, the spikes are.
the lower the well, it starts to come back
So-
above.
It's not worth necessarily looking at this part.
Right.
What you need to look through is this part. What is the trend?
And it just shows the demand down, just static levels up.
But if you look on 41 and 43, what concerns me is if you go from 21 to current, that trend is going down. Even though you're going 50-50, people around you are still using water. And so your overall usage of the aquifer may be equal for the last few years, but the people around you is using it, so the aquifer is dropping. So the concern being on the Evangeline side, you can't lower any of those wells. So as soon as we hit rock bottom, you start dropping those wells off and they just have to go dead because there's no water left I can pull from. On the Jasper side, we've still got quite a few hundred feet in some cases to go. Jasper, we're in the upper Jasper portion, which has better water quality. If you go deeper into the Jasper, you start getting closer to Catahoula water, so it's saltier water. So we still have a couple hundred feet before we hit that within the wells. Problem is when you drop the well and reduce or drop the pump down, bigger motors, bigger electrical devices, higher power costs, so on and so forth. So it's not trending in the way it should, even though Woodlands has requested 50-50.
Trend follows the regulatory requirements that the county was under and now it's not under. So you can correlate those two dates with the swings up and the swings to go back down. And there was county regulations that required usage, and then those went away. And it coincides with the trends on that graph pretty well.
So one of the things we need to deal with at some point is how do we prioritize this and what do we do about it? And this is probably one of the most controversial topics that we'll deal with, both within the Woodlands, but certainly countywide. Okay, but getting a feel for when people talk about subsidence, they talk about aquifer levels. This is the beginning of the data for that discussion. Okay. And, well,
I'd classify it as controversial, yeah.
Yeah.
My experience. But that's true. I mean, this is the kind of science we need, you know, to
Who's
talk.
overlooking the usage? Anyone?
Yes, the responsibility is in the hands of Most Urban Water Conservation District. Previously, there was.
I can get you a contact.
But they were supposed to be giving permits, right?
They are definitely giving permits.
Too many?
Significant right now, but they're under a different set of criteria than they were when the rules existed. which the rules, and y'all can all help me, everybody with this, but essentially there was a requirement for all large groundwater users in the county to reduce groundwater by a certain percentage by 2015. And I think it went into effect in 2016. And so that happened. So you joined Sensor River Storage CRP, other muds around the lake created their own. Basically, you had to find another water source. So some muds dug deeper to really deep aquifers, and other muds went, and municipalities went into the surface water plan. Well, I think there was 80 of them. And then everybody was required to figure it out. So some said, I can't figure it out, I'm gonna go with SJ's plan. Some said, I can figure it out on my own, and they drilled different wells, did their aquifer. The science behind what built that regulation was challenged. And based on that challenge, that rule went away. So Lone Star's mandate, a rule to require that groundwater reduction and pumping went away across the whole county. And then getting really into the weeds, but what is set right now, I know, is a desired future condition through GMA 14. There's, like I said, I'm getting real deep, but and they're essentially staying under that number, and that's the overall pumpage out of the aquifer that is allowed. So I think they're saying as long as I stay under that number, I can keep pumping out permits. That's what they're doing right now. And now you, as a member of the GRP, have stayed with the program, which was to be the good neighbor and utilize surface water. So you're still 50-50. And others are different percentages.
70-30.
Look at page 31. That's the data.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
That fire station.
Same aquifer, similar regulation, their regulation's still in play. Theirs went into play in 2010. And so all of the municipalities in 2010 in Harris County were required to convert. Now, they didn't have, many of those muds and municipalities didn't have the ability to get to these deeper wells, the Catahoula. So they were all required to go to North Harris County Regional Water Authority, or there's a couple others, West Fort Bend, Central Houston. There's another one. There's several different regional water authorities that all were created GRPs for Harris County.
With North Harris County, or I guess it's two sections, area 2. They're on the 2025, right? They're gonna have to start pumping more to farther west
So
for their second
starting
phase.
next year, they should be at 65% surface water, 35% groundwater.
So if you start at the coast and work this way, it's taking more hold in the coastal area because of the
Right.
greater concern with subsidence. So those areas have pretty much stopped groundwater and it's worked its way up. Harris County is regulated.
10% for
Yeah.
most of
It's
Harris.
showing that it's working. USGS sent out a report that showed that static water levels in Harris County are actually looking better than they used to be. So it actually, and you have a board member on your board that has been significantly involved with this in his career, been on several of the boards we've just talked about, and probably knows more than
And
anybody.
Bites is
in
gone
the
a lot.
metro area about this. Shout out.
But while, since this, can I just a moment of not
I mean, to me, this is important education for our new members.
No,
okay?
no,
This
no.
is-
I
this is-
wanted to
this
say
is-
to John to pay attention that on the 26th of September, speaking of these, USGS has again agreed with me to have a Woodlands Green presentation that goes, they do hundreds of wells every year about the distance from the surface to the water table. So they'll be doing that, and I've asked them to focus on Montgomery County and Northern Harris County. With the woodlandsgreen.org, we have another meeting before that, and I'll bring it up again, but he also shows all the USGS regional subsidence monitors, including any of them in Montgomery County up to Waller and even close to Huntsville. So if you tune in on that, Jason is the chief science engineer there, Jason Ramage, and it'll be broadcast on Zoom, and it's really very informative about this issue. Without any politics, it's just the facts. Here's how far and we show the wells that have declined and risen.
If you go to the Woodlands Green
So how do
website, you can
we,
find some.
as a board member, correct this, like get the rule back or can we?
Good question. Political clout, you know, worse than mass, honestly. One of the first moves that was made that started the process to remove it was to change that board to be elected. And then that board was then elected after that legislation or that rule was changed. And ever since that board was elected, the rule was challenged in a way. This is a Lone Star.
Lone Star Conservation.
So there's electable positions. That could be one.
There are several positions up for reelection in November.
I'll talk about it to anybody until you make me stop. So
We appreciate
not
that.
in this public forum though.
Okay, let's go on. Yeah, enough education for
I
tonight.
appreciate you bringing it
Yeah,
up
yeah.
though. you know.
No, but it's.
I think that's great.
Yeah, okay. Chris, I don't know if you want to add anything on item 13, or you want me just to give some background on?
Yeah, for 13, I mean, that's.
Yeah, okay, so, one of the other trustees at the trustee meeting requested, or I guess maybe it was at his MUD meeting. Anyway,
Originally, I think, and then it went there.
yeah, so there was a request to say, give me 5 years of data for your key performance metrics for the wastewater treatment plant number 1, for that fluent. And that's what that data is. I wanted to make sure we saw it as addition as other MUDs are looking at it. And the message is, over the last many years, they continue to run very, very well.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no growing degradation of performance that says, oh,
Over the time.
yeah, over the time they look at.
I do have a nerdy ex-water chemist question if I could.
At 5 o'clock, I'll see what I can do.
No, I just was looking at the ammonia and you had very few little spikes, but they were significant spikes in ammonia. And I just wondered if anybody knew whether those were operational or if there's some kind of loading issue that happens.
So plant 1 is more of a mechanical issue. Whenever we start having blower issues or changing out the blowers and stuff and air drops out, then we turn it back on and we get that spike.
Yeah, so they were very small, but I'm just saying they were very significant peaks.
They're only as significant as E. coli.
Yeah, we do. E. coli is a very, as y'all know, E. coli. I mean, the wind blows when we're taking the sample. Somebody accidentally brushes their finger across the liner of the cap or something, and you have no idea until it's turned in. So very finicky.
Thank you.
Okay, anything on Bear Branch, Panther Creek?
We are working with the River Authority and LJA to request approval from the Texas Water Development Board on an extension of the project schedule, as well as to notify them of the cost increase. The grant agreement that MUD 67 entered into with the Water Development Board in connection with the project had a requirement that the project budget be included in the grant agreement as well as the project schedule. The project schedule stated that the project would begin, construction would begin in late April of this year, and the project will be complete by mid-June of next year, which is obviously not realistic. Also, the costs have increased significantly, as Eric has touched on. So we do need to go through those steps with the Water Development Board to get an amendment to the grant agreement on the schedule, as well as notification on the cost. So that's in process.
Yeah, this was just FYI to show you kind of where the financials sat. In June, you heard a presentation from the engineer that talked about what Brian basically said was the recent estimate was higher than those numbers, 11.6. And so, so since then, the discussion has been, well, what do we do next? And what I had offered to the the stakeholders, which you're one of, is that we would see if we could bring state and federal legislators in a room to talk with the township and us to see if there was any funding somewhere. We did that yesterday, and it appears that there's not necessarily just the delta that we need sitting there somewhere. There was a lot of discussion about, so we also presented the presentation that you heard in June was presented to Representative Toth and Congressman Crenshaw's representative that was in the room yesterday. You all have all heard that presentation, but good conversation, dialogue, kind of brainstorm different things. The model is done, and so the model can be kind of you can throw some scenarios at the model to see if there's maybe another option that maybe is cheaper, that still gets the benefit to the community, bringing that water level down on research. That's the goal. And so more to come on that. No decisions or anything like that were made. Likely what is going to happen is the engineer is going to present to us or provide to us next month a couple of different cost estimates for running a few scenarios and seeing if we can fine tune this thing. So that's where it's headed. Yep.
Brian, anything on 15?
Nothing on your open session, though.
Okay. All right, you want to take us to?
Yeah, I don't have anything more on the GM. Oh, yes, I do. Wanted to give you, well, go ahead, John. Go ahead.
I'll make it quick for you. I can smell the steak up. Did everybody get supplemental communication support? They didn't make it in your main.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, just a couple highlights on here for you. You see, we have an outreach calendar forming. Invite directors to attend any and all of those. Also note that this calendar or these events are on the Google Calendar that you have access to. You want to refer back to those. A lot of numbers today. I didn't want to be left out, so I gave you some stats on our social media there on page 2. And really encouraging numbers coming in on Nextdoor. We're hitting almost 38,000 households with that, with about 4,000 reads on our posts each week. So that's been a nice tool that just started up this year. We're now a proud sponsor of Woodlands Online Sports. So that's where you'll go to watch all live and recorded high school sports at College Park and Woodlands High School. They get about 100,000 views annually for that. We'll have commercials, prominent ads, and also advertising throughout their larger website. That's a nice one to get us enmeshed in that large segment of our community. We're excited about that. And then Eric, do you want to make a note about Holloway?
Yeah. Okay. And then also the stat I was going to mention was, the average usage for a homestead or for a home is about 10,000 gallons a month for water. In the summer, that'll go up to 14, 15, 16. Last month, it was 7?
Well, through July, we were at 78.
Yeah. So what is normally probably 14 above the average, it actually was below the average, almost in half of what it normally would be at that time of the year, which is pretty unbelievable.
That's great.
So, and then what he was mentioning was, we've been meeting with the PR consultant, Holloway, and they have been developing their recommendations for building a community working group, and who would be on it, what demographic, what MUD director, village associations, township, different community members to be a part of this process to brainstorm and talk about messaging, et cetera, as we go through educating the public on aging infrastructure. So one of the I'll just plant the seed for tonight. Nothing to decide, but each MUD will have the opportunity to nominate or if there's a volunteer to be on the community working group. So I'll just offer that, and I'll probably be asking for a name next month.
Can you talk about the time commitment for that?
Yeah, there would probably be, it'll be, my guess is there would be probably a meeting a month. Probably for, upwards of a year,
So,
for maybe an hour.
you know, dates and times, I think we probably know our schedules a little bit.
The dates and times.
You know, third Tuesday of the month, we have this meeting.
Yeah.
John, thanks so much.
I could, just a personal note that the landscaping solutions, I've been out here a long time and find that to be the best function that they do, as far as I'm concerned. It's all landscape, a lot of native plant society, you know, experts at that kind of stuff in conservation. Rain barrels, irrigation systems, and all kind of demonstrations. And on September the 28th, we at least have a 50-50 chance of being cool. It can be hot, but I'd encourage people to go to that because it does have a lot to do with conservation.
So, trustees report, interest of time, I'll, just a couple, a couple highlights here. Encourage you to make sure you read through this. There was a pretty extensive discussion on the One Water Task Force. I would be interested at a future meeting, getting your input on this. From a MUD standpoint, how much do we think we need to be engaged? Do we think this water authority is the right way to do this? Or is there something else that should handle this?
On the One Water,
One Water, yeah. So if we could add that to the agenda next month, you guys. Yeah, okay. And then there was a discussion of ongoing discussions about the treatment plant number 1. So that was talked about. There was a proposal to do a independent assessment of what it would take to keep the current plant running for 25 years. That was voted on, voted down 4-6. So that's not going forward. But I want to let you know that did happen. I think, and then the committee updates, and Eric just mentioned some of the stuff about the Public Education Committee. So that's overlap in that discussion. So happy to answer any questions about the trustee meeting. Trustee or Eric or Ron, anything? Okay, recess.
We do.
thank you very much.